There's something unnerving about the open road at night. The emptiness, the isolation. It's as if the world beyond your headlights ceases to exist. But sometimes that isolation hides more than it reveals. 5 friends, a simple plan, a road trip to escape the monotony of college life. It should have been just another adventure. Laughs, stories, and memories to share for years to come. But fate doesn't always follow the map. The storm wasn't part of the plan. Neither was the motel. A place so hidden it felt like it had been waiting for them. Waiting for anyone who had no other choice. Desperation has a way of clouding judgment. It makes a dim light look warm. A locked door seems safe. And a stranger's hospitality feel like kindness. They didn't question it. Why would they? A place to escape the storm, free of charge. It seemed like an answer, but answers have questions hiding behind them. And sometimes, those questions are the kind you don't want to ask. What began as a refuge quickly became a labyrinth. Each step deeper into the motel peeled back another layer. Rooms that shouldn't connect did. Hallways that seemed endless. Doors that wouldn't stay shut. And as the night stretched on, reality itself seemed to slip away. This isn't a story about a storm. It's not about the motel. It's about what happens when you're forced to face the things you've buried the deepest. The fears you've locked away. The choices you regret. The truths you can't escape. For these 5 friends, the storm wasn't the real danger. And the motel wasn't salvation. It was something else entirely. And by morning, they'd wish they had kept driving. On the surface, it was just a motel. Worn carpets, faded wallpaper, and a lingering smell of damp wood. But something about it felt paused, as if the space itself was holding its breath. You're lucky you found us. Roads ahead are flooded. Rooms are on the house tonight. All I ask is you stay inside until sunrise. The receptionist said. There was no hesitation. Exhaustion and the storm made the choice for them. A free room? Who would say no? But bargains have their cost. It's just that the price wasn't clear yet. A maze. A puzzle. A trap. But they didn't see it that way. To them, it was just another piece of the motel's faded charm. They didn't see how the figures seemed alive. It started with the small things. A creak in the floorboards. A door that seemed heavier to open. Reflections in the mirrors that didn't quite match their movements. Details so small they could be brushed off. For now, outside, the storm raged on. But the real danger was already inside, weaving itself into the walls, waiting for the right moment to be seen. In every corner of the motel, there was a rhythm, a pattern, the sound of something or someone watching, calculating. The painting had changed, but they didn't notice. How could they? Their minds were already starting to bend under the motel's weight. And the longer they stayed, the harder it would be to see what was real. The book was worn, its spine cracked as if it had been read over and over again. Yet the words inside made no sense. They weren't meant to. The darkness wasn't empty. It never is. It holds its own weight, its own presence, pressing against you until you can't breathe. He was watching, always watching, but the screens didn't just show the present. They showed something deeper, something just outside the bounds of time. Together, they felt safer. But safety was an illusion. The motel wasn't just holding them, it was learning them, their fears, their secrets, their weaknesses. It was preparing. They thought they were the ones walking through the motel. But they weren't. Something else was moving first, guiding them, waiting for them to follow. By the time they realized what was happening, it was too late. The motel had already begun its work. They thought they had found a refuge, a place to wait out the storm. But the storm outside wasn't the one they needed to fear. The motel had its own storm, a quiet one that settled into the cracks of their minds and waited. His room looked like any other. A bed, a chair, a window that offered no view but the endless rain. It was ordinary, unassuming, but things are rarely as they seem. The details were already shifting, rearranging themselves, though he didn't notice at first. One of the friends, Jake, tosses his backpack onto the bed in his room. He laughs to himself, shaking his head. Free rooms and spooky vibes. Classic horror setup, he muttered. He was the first to dismiss the unease, the tension that seemed to hum just beneath the surface. He laughed at the creaking door hinges, the way the shadows stretched too long across the floor. But laughter wouldn't protect him from what the motel had planned. Reflections tell the truth, or so they say. But the mirror wasn't a reflection of him. It was a reflection of something deeper, something the room wanted him to see, or perhaps something it wanted him to become. The first knock was innocent enough, just a sound. But when he closed the door and turned back to his bed, something had changed. The curtains were drawn now, though he hadn't touched them. And his phone was gone. The window was a portal, showing him what he feared most, being lost, utterly alone. The forest beckoned him, its branches tapping against the glass, even though it was impossible. There were no trees near the motel, but there they were, waiting for him. The room had taken hold of him, pulling him into its illusion. He screamed, but the walls muffled the sound, trapping it like a fly in amber. The motel wasn't just a place. It was a labyrinth of the mind, reshaping itself for each of them. No matter how many times they turned the handle, no matter how many times they stepped into the hallway, they ended up back inside. The motel wasn't letting them go. Not yet. The friends, now frantic, managed to regroup in the lobby. Their faces are pale, their breaths quick. One holds his wrist up, showing his watch. "What time do you have?" "Mine says midnight." Another friend checks his watch. It says 2:15 a.m. A third says 10:47 p.m. Time had fractured. Each watch ticked to its own rhythm, its own reality. The storm outside had become secondary. Inside, the rules were breaking, bending, rearranging themselves around the motel's will. They were beginning to see it now. The cracks, the inconsistencies, the way reality twisted the longer they stayed. But the realization came too late. The motel had already decided what came next. The storm outside has grown more violent, with wind howling and rain hammering against the windows. The friends huddled together, their breaths visible in the unnaturally cold air. They were beginning to understand the motel wasn't just a shelter. It was something alive, something watching, waiting, but its secrets didn't reveal themselves all at once. They unfolded like a game, a cruel, calculated game that none of them agreed to play. One friend, Jake, begins rifling through the desk drawers in the lobby. Papers scatter, and he freezes when he pulls out an old, leather-bound book covered in dust. The book looked like it had been forgotten, left to decay in the shadows. But it wasn't forgotten. It was placed, and it was waiting for someone to open it. He hesitates, then flips open the book. The pages are filled with handwritten entries, dates, names, and cryptic messages that seem to blur as he reads them aloud. June 12th, 1987. The walls are closing in. I can't breathe. August 4th, 1994. I thought I heard my mother's voice, but she's been gone for years. October 19th, 2003. I don't remember my own name anymore. His voice trembles as the entries grow more incoherent, devolving into scrawled phrases like, "Don't trust the doors," and "The receptionist knows." It wasn't just a book. It was a record, a history of those who had come before, those who thought they had found refuge in the storm. But there were no endings, only fragments, as if the stories were never finished. Another friend glances nervously toward the receptionist, who stands perfectly still behind the desk, his hands folded neatly. His expression hasn't changed, but his eyes follow their every move. Why would anyone write this stuff? Is it some kind of sick joke? The question hung in the air, unanswered. But deep down, they all knew. The book wasn't a joke. It was a warning, one they were already too late to heed. The receptionist steps forward, his movements unnaturally fluid. The group instinctively backs away as he picks up the guest book, his smile widening. "You've read the stories, I see. Guests always do, but they rarely understand the rules until it's too late." He spoke with the calmness of someone delivering routine instructions, like explaining a hotel's amenities. But his words carried a weight that pressed against their chests, making it hard to breathe. "You see, this place, it needs you. It needs all of you. Your fears sustain it. Your memories, your regrets, they're what keep it alive. And in return, it gives you exactly what you're running from. Safety, shelter, forever." One friend stepped forward, her voice shaking. "Why us? What do you want from us?" The receptionist tilts his head, his smile fading for the first time. "Want? Oh, my dear, I don't want anything. The motel does, and it always gets what it needs." The quietest of the group, a young man who has remained near the back, his face pale and his eyes wide, takes a step forward, his hands trembling. I think I've been here before." The group falls silent. The rain outside seems to stop for a brief moment, replaced by a deafening stillness. "What are you talking about? You've been here before?" The Jake replied. "I don't know how. I don't know when. But this place, it feels familiar. Like I've walked these halls, heard these sounds. And..." He hesitates, his voice breaking as he looks at the receptionist. "And I think I escaped last time, but I don't remember how." The group stares at him, their expressions a mix of confusion and fear. The receptionist watches with an almost imperceptible shift in his expression. Amusement, perhaps, or curiosity. It was a revelation that changed everything and nothing. If he had been here before, why couldn't he remember? And if he had escaped once, why was he back? The questions piled up, but the answers were nowhere to be found. The guest book, now lying open on the desk. One friend flips to the final page, where a single phrase is scrawled in bold, jagged handwriting. "No one ever truly leaves." The faint hum beneath the motel grows louder, more insistent. They had thought the storm outside was the danger, but now they knew the truth. The storm was only the beginning. The real storm was here inside these walls, and it had only just begun. The motel had a way of pulling apart the seams of reality. Was it the flickering of the lights, the way shadows moved against the walls, or the gnawing sense that they were being watched? Perhaps it was something deeper, something more personal. The rooms weren't just rooms. They were reflections of everything they had tried to forget, everything they thought they'd left behind. None of this makes any sense. It's just an old motel. "The storm is messing with our heads," said Jake. "Messing with our heads? Did the storm make the clock spin backwards? Did the storm make me see my own reflection wink at me?" replied another. "What if this isn't the storm at all? What if we're already dead?" said the third friend. His voice trembles as he speaks. The others stare at him, the silence stretching uncomfortably long. Friend 1 angrily shouted, "Don't start with that nonsense. We're alive, okay? We're alive, and this is just some messed up prank or something." Friend 4 in a calm but distant tone said, "If it's a prank, then why can't we leave? Why do the hallways keep changing? Why do the doors lead us back to the same place?" The arguments weren't just about the strange events. They were about something deeper. Fear has a way of bringing out the worst in people. Blame, anger, denial. They clung to these emotions, hoping they could use them to make sense of the senseless. But the motel didn't care about their arguments. It cared only about the fear they couldn't suppress. The group sits in a circle in one of the rooms, the walls now covered in faded, peeling wallpaper that seems to ripple when touched. Their voices are hushed, as if afraid the motel itself might be listening. Friend 2 hesitantly said, "I saw something earlier, in the hallway. It was me, but older, wrinkled, gray hair staring back at me like I was the reflection." Friend 3 nodding, added, "Same here. I heard someone crying when I opened my door. I thought it was one of you, but it wasn't. It was my sister from years ago. She's been gone a long time, but it was her. I'm sure of it." Friend 1 angrily interrupted, "Stop. Just stop. You're scaring yourselves over nothing. Mirrors don't move on their own. Dead people don't cry. This is all in our heads." Friend 4, quietly staring at the floor. Maybe that's the point. What if this place gets inside our heads, makes us see things we don't want to see? What if it's feeding off that somehow they weren't hallucinating? At least not in the way they understood the word. The motel wasn't showing them random images or tricks of the light. It was showing them the truths they tried to bury, the fears they refused to confront. And the longer they stayed, the stronger its grip became. It wasn't just about escape anymore. It was about survival, not from the storm, not even from the motel, but from themselves. The rooms weren't just rooms. They were mirrors of the soul. And the deeper they looked, the more trapped they became. Back in the hallway, the friends regrouped. Friend 3 whispers, What if the only way out is to stop running from it? What if we face whatever it's trying to show us?" Friend 1 sarcastically deflecting, "Yeah, great plan. Let's all sit down and hug our demons. That'll fix everything." Friend 4 sounding more serious said, "Maybe it will. Maybe that's the only way to stop this." They argued, as they always did, but the motel was patient. It had all the time in the world, and it knew that, eventually, they would stop arguing. They would start breaking. By now, the guest book, now glowing faintly under the flickering light. Another page has filled itself in, the ink wet and fresh. Friend 2 reads aloud. Room 7. The storm outside is nothing compared to the storm within. The question wasn't whether they would escape. The question was whether they could face what waited for them if they did. Friend 4 holding a lantern led the group down a seemingly endless hallway, their footsteps echoing against the cracked tiles. The air feels heavy, and faint whispers drift through the walls. They had reached their breaking point. The motel was no longer content with subtle tricks and quiet whispers. It had begun to show its teeth. Yet, in their desperation, the group found a glimmer of resolve. They would outsmart the motel, or die trying. Friend 2 shatters a mirror with a chair, shouting in defiance. The shards scatter across the floor, reflecting distorted images of their faces. Friend 2 shouting said, "It's just a place, a building. We can destroy it." The sound of the glass breaking reverberates unnaturally, growing louder until it resembles distant screams. Friend 1, panicking, said, "Stop. What if breaking things just makes it worse? Friend 4 responded firmly. Worse than this? What else can it do? Their defiance didn't go unanswered. The motel responded with fury, twisting reality around them. Hallways stretched endlessly, doors multiplied, and their nightmares grew tangible, clawing at the edges of their sanity. Friend 3 opens a door, only to find a version of themselves staring back, emaciated and chained to a wall. The other version whispers, "You'll never leave." He screamed, "It's not real! It's not real!" The whispers grow louder, overlapping into an incomprehensible cacophony. Friend 2 pleaded, "Please, we're sorry. Just let us go." Friend 4 shouted, "Don't apologize to it. Fight it." Suddenly, Friend 1 discovers an old maintenance hatch in the floor. He gestures frantically to the others. "Here, this might be a way out." Hope flickered for a moment, but hope was exactly what the motel wanted them to feel. It let them believe escape was possible, only to snatch it away. As they pry open the hatch, the floor beneath them begins to ripple like water. One by one, they are dragged into separate rooms, their screams echoing as the doors slam shut behind them. Friend 4 shouting, "No, stay together." The motel knew their weaknesses, their fears. It didn't just show them, it made them live them. Alone, Friend 4 stumbles into the lobby, clutching a bloodied piece of wood as a weapon. He finds the receptionist waiting, calm as ever, with Friend 1 standing beside him. Friend 4 shouted in disbelief, "What are you doing? We're supposed to be escaping." Friend 1 replied quietly, without meeting his eyes, "There is no escape, but there is a deal." "A deal? With that thing?" Friend 4 replied angrily. Desperation can make monsters of even the most loyal friends. The motel didn't need to trap all of them. It only needed one to turn. Friend 1 pleaded, "You don't understand. It promised me I could leave. It promised me my life back." Shaking his head, Friend 4 said, "At what cost?" "At our cost." Friend 4 lunges at Friend 1, but the receptionist raises a hand. The air shimmers and Friend 4 is thrown backward into a wall. Now smiling, the receptionist said, "Deals must be honored, and sacrifices must be made." The betrayal was complete. The group's bond had been their only chance of survival, and now it was shattered. But the motel wasn't done. It never was. Back to the guest book, where a new entry appears in fresh, dripping ink. Room 13. Betrayal. Escape was never the goal. Survival was an illusion. The motel had claimed another group, and its doors remained open for the next unwitting travelers. The storm outside is relentless. Lightning illuminates the battered faces of the remaining friends as they sprint through the rain. Their breaths come in ragged gasps, their clothes soaked and torn. Friend 4 clutches Friend 3's arm, dragging them forward through the mud. The motel looms in the background, its neon sign flickering. They thought they had won, that breaking the rules of the game meant they could escape it. But the motel wasn't a place. It was a trap, a cage that let you think the door was open, just to watch you fall when you tried to leave. Friend 2 stumbles, looking back at the motel, which now appears smaller, darker, its windows glowing faintly. The storm grows louder, drowning out their cries as they run further into the woods. Friend 4 shouting over the rain, "We're almost there. Just keep going." In desperation, Friend 3 shouted, "Where's there? Where are we even going?" A faint, familiar laugh echoes through the storm, growing louder. Friend 3 freezes mid-step, eyes wide. Friend 3 whisper, "No, no, this isn't real." We left. We left. They break through the tree line and into a clearing. Ahead, faint lights beckon through the rain. The group stumbles toward them, only to realize they've returned to the front of the motel. The neon sign flashes vacancy. The doors creak open on their own, revealing the same lobby they just fled. The storm wasn't the end. It never was. The motel didn't need walls to keep them. It had their minds. And minds can be far more binding than any door. Friend 4 collapses to his knees, his face a mask of disbelief. Friend 3 backs away, shaking his head. Hysterically, he cried, "No, no, this isn't happening." The receptionist's footsteps echo through the lobby. He emerges from the shadows, his expression calm, his hands clasped in front of him. Softly, he said, "Welcome back. We've been expecting you." Meanwhile, in the guest book, slowly, their names appear, written in ink that seems to ooze from the pages. Friend 4 lunges toward the book, trying to tear it apart, but their hands pass through it as though it isn't real. It wasn't the walls that kept them here. It wasn't the rooms or the endless hallways. The motel had taken something far more precious, hope. And without hope, there was no escape. Friend 4 slumps into a chair, his face blank. Friend 3 stares at the receptionist, who smiles as he places a new key on the counter. The receptionist, with a chilling finality, muttered, "Room 13 is ready for you." A beaten-up car pulls into the parking lot, its headlights cutting through the rain-soaked night. Inside, a new group of travelers laughs nervously, unaware of the horrors that await. One of the travelers jokingly said, "Well, this is cozy. Perfect place to wait out the storm." Another chuckled, "Yeah, as long as the place isn't haunted. No one leaves. Not really." The motel wasn't just a place. It was a mirror. It reflected the parts of you that you kept hidden, the fears you dared not confront, the secrets you wished would stay buried. And once it saw you, it never let go. But what about you? What would you do if you found yourself there? If your deepest fears came alive and the only way out was through them, would you face the truth about yourself? Or would the motel claim you too? If this story left you questioning what's real, then you're already part of the motel's legacy. But there's more where this came from. Subscribe to our channel for more tales that won't just entertain. They'll follow you long after the credits roll. Like this video, share it with fellow horror fans, and don't forget to hit the bell icon. We promise, you won't want to miss what's next. After all, the motel has room for everyone,